Hi there. I'm Dee. Welcome to Clinically Polyamorous and Naturally Black. I'm a licensed therapist, social worker, and all-around psychology geek. Today we're talking about the basics of polyamory, a form of ethical non-monogamy, which, are pretty big buzzwords these days. There's a lot of different perspectives of both ethical non-monogamy and unethical non-monogamy. Polyamory is based on trying to reach that ethical goal. So we're going to talk a bit about it, and I'll also share a bit about my experiences. So I'm not on Face today, but so you know, I'm a cisgender black woman from the East Coast, currently in the polyamorous community. She, her pronouns, because, cisgender. I've experienced a lot that has made me who I am today, both as a provider for the polyamorous community and as someone within it. I have been very impressed by a lot of the content being produced these days, and there's still a tendency for what's out there to be from the perspective of certain people. I thought I would lend my perspective and give you some basics. And of course, the biggest basic is, what is polyamory? Well, at its most basic, it's the practice of engaging in multiple romantic relationships. In the story. uh, but with the consent and knowledge of all parties involved. There are different ways of practicing polyamory. It could involve the concept of don't ask, don't tell, which we'll get into eventually. That's a whole bag of worms. But that is one where there is awareness of polyamory being the orientation of the relationship, the style of the relationship, the shape of the relationship. However, partners don't want to know everything, or there are very specific things they want to know. And I'll say real quick, that usually is when there is a new relationship, when partners are going out, and healthy practices to protect people's bodies, and their autonomy. But that aside, I used the word orientation a few minutes ago. I describe polyamory as one of many forms of relationship style and a relationship orientation. Now, when I say orientation, I am not talking in the same way as being gay, being bisexual, being asexual. Those are far more complicated and often far more, in some ways, nuanced. I think one thing I will say is they're also a spectrum. There are people that are super straight, there are people that are super gay or super bi, dead in the middle, and there's a heck of a lot of room in between. Polyamory is a bit different in that it is on a spectrum of ethical and unethical non-monogamy, of relationship styles in general, but for some people, it is a bit more than a choice. Now, what does that mean? It means monogamy, polyamory, any sort of relationship style, we have a certain orientation, a certain way of facing towards. So for me, have I done monogamy? I did it for several years and had a lovely relationship. That is not my natural, comfortable space for relationships. So before getting into polyamory, you do have to ask yourself, okay, what makes me comfortable in monogamy? What makes me comfortable in non-monogamy, theoretically? There's a lot of people romanticizing, oh, I'm going to have this partner. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get all of the snuggles in the world. They don't necessarily think about the Saturday night when every single partner is busy and they're home alone. Some people do fine with that. Other people, it crashes the bubble because what makes them so comfortable in polyamory is this idea that they'll always have someone, and they can unpack it. But all of those little things that make up our comfort zone have to be explored and we have to continue to get to know. So, one of the most basic things is, do monogamous relationships make you happy? If you are a chronic cheater, what is going on? Legit, what is happening for you in those dynamics? Are you sabotaging your relationships? Are you feeling restricted? Are you being dishonest to yourself? Are you being just straight up selfish? Sometimes that's where we're at. But to figure out if maybe monogamy isn't your orientation, you have to do some deep dives. Even if you've never cheated, even if you're in a good monogamous relationship, was that an active choice? Or is that another thing society prescribed to you? I'm not saying monogamy's bad. I am not one of those poly people that's going to sit here going, ooh, grr, monogamy and the control of society, and I could probably write a whole dissertation on the sociology of monogamy. I'm going to spare that. Well, I might do it later. But for now, whole other thing. Monogamy is just as valid as polyamory. All relationship styles can be valid if they are a conscientious choice that authentically reflects everyone involved. Now, when we talk about polyamory, a lot of people bring up polygamy. Outside of like the literal definition of polygamy as a man with multiple wives, the reason that system is different and why polyamorous separate themselves is it's often very patriarchal, it's often very sexist, and it often has little to no input on whether every woman is happy. It's often in religious institutions, and while there's absolutely nothing wrong with having multiple girlfriends, having multiple willing, consensual partners, the ethics are entirely lost. And often, polygamy comes with an expectation you don't question it. You don't question the structure, you don't question whether it's good, you don't question your wants or needs. You know, just accept being a sister wife. I don't get down with that ish. Let's be 100 here. I do not think that's healthy. I do not see it work out. I have never, in my slowly trekking towards 6 years of being in the field, recall ever seeing any relationship like that work at this point. I know they're out there. I have encountered them virtually, but that is a very difficult structure to make work. Now, relationship orientation can be mixed in a couple. And so the polycule, which is the network of people connected through a polyamorous person, can include monogamous people. So when I was in a monogamous relationship and really in denial about how strongly oriented towards polyamory I can be, I pitched to my then partner, well, what about a mixed orientation relationship style? You know, essentially pulling from that idea, well, if you want to be monogamous, that's fine. I am not happy. Well, that's a heck of a lot of work. If it had worked out, what that could have looked like is I have two other partners and him. People do it. People can make it work. There's also ambiamorous people who don't really care either way. But on that, I digress. The point is, your core relationship style has to be a part of figuring out if you're polyamorous. Now, there are different types of polyamorous relationships. Like I said, you'll hear people talk about a V structure, which is a relationship shaped like a V. One person is at the center with two partners who are not romantically involved with each other. That V may have other branches, but it's referred to as as a V because it's coming from that one person. So, say I am dating Paul and Marty. I am the hinge, the center point of that V shape. Paul and Marty don't have a relationship. You have what the media loves to report on. It makes me gag. And that's not shade to anyone who's in this sort of dynamic. I think they can work quite well. Triads. That is where you have a triangle shape. Three people are romantically involved with each other. So many couples try to transition to non-monogamy by finding what's called a unicorn, which is a often woman or a third party to bring into their existing relationship. The problem with that is many of them don't actually do the work of questioning why they're expecting this new person to just conform to the norms, morals, and expectations they've created. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't. I get it psychologically. But it's a heck of an expectation to set. Now, from triads, you can basically consider a dyadic relationship. So you have a triad, but each member has its own dynamic, even if everyone's together pretty often. Paul and Marty, in this case, were a triangle, right? Paul and Marty have their relationship. I have my relationship with Paul. I have my relationship with Marty. Just because we spend 3 nights a week together doesn't mean we don't spend independent time with each other. Every Friday night, let's say Paul and Marty go-karting. Not just because I'm not super interested, but because they have decided that's their date night. It's that simple. I really encourage people who are in a triad to stay very aware of how enmeshed the triad has become to the point it compromises the dyad, the relationship between 2 points of that triangle. There's also a quad, which is 4 people. You have solo polyamory, which is where individuals maintain multiple relationships and prioritize their independence and autonomy. There can be fewer debates than defining 2 terms, solo polyamory and relationship anarchy. I can only give you my perspective, and that is built on a lot of reading, a lot of interacting with people. Solo polyamory, again, individuals maintain relationships, prioritize their independence, their autonomy. They may live with someone or nest with them, but ultimately their relationships are separate. You might hear the terms parallel polyamory. So that's a bit different, but it can overlap. So parallel polyamory is when your relationships don't touch. You don't cross the streams. You have your relationships basically on completely different tracks. That is the opposite of kitchen table polyamory, where your relationships are where you can all sit down at a kitchen table together. That's the concept of it. Some people take it a bit further, and they want kitchen table or KTP where it's not just that we're having a meal together for an hour, it's we're also watching TV. We're also doing this. I'm going to be perfectly honest. It can be so difficult doing KTP because you're dealing with so many emotions and relationship structures that it can be tough, especially if you're also dealing with people who are hoping to have a poly household down the line. They want people to live together. And while that is beautiful and can work out very well and save a lot of money, oh my god, you end up contending with people forgetting other folks' comfort zones. And the fact that what they have done in their past relationships doesn't mean that their happy partner wants to participate in them. For the first time this year, I celebrated Valentine's Day with a partner and his partner. We went out to dinner. He got us gifts. It was really lovely. Like, super lovely. What I am going to have to watch out for, not because this partner is malicious or selfish or anything like that, but just because I know him, is repeatedly that being a go-to. Because it can be very easy for people to go to a place of, well, we all get along. I feel great having both of you around, or all of you around. How about we do this together? Especially if someone's messed up and there's a conflict of time. That is difficult. And that can start to breed some resentment because it can start to come across as, one, you're getting lazy, just gonna be honest. And I say that not about my partner, but I say that having observed how people react. There's a concern that because it's easier to do everything together, independent time is being deprioritized for the sake of ease. You have to check with your partners repeatedly when it comes to doing KTP. And when I say repeatedly, it doesn't have to be every day, it doesn't have to be every week, it doesn't even have to be every month. But you have to be fastidious and opening the door to say, hey, is this working? Is this intentional time as a polycule, as a group, fine? Is there enough time that's just you and I? Or in some cases, some people like the triad within the polycule. They still need to ask that question. Is there enough time for me, myself, and Irene? Is there enough time for Paul, Marty, and me? Well, from there, once you're past KTP, we get to the concept of relationship anarchy, which I'm honestly not even going to try to define because I know I won't do a good job with it. I will say relationship anarchy is not doing what you want selfishly. There's a lot of people who hide behind relationship anarchy, and they're just assholes using that as a shield. Relationship anarchy is not about being selfish. It still requires empathy, communication, honesty, compromise, and consideration. It's, okay, I'm going to define it a little bit. It is, in many ways, philosophically about freeing yourself from the expectations of any relationship structure and happily cherry picking your own because that's authentic to you. That's all I'll say there. So when I talk about my partners, another word that's important is metamour, or meta. A metamour is your partner's partner, just straight up. That is a person you're not in a relationship with. Now, it can get into a gray area if you are also in a polyamorous relationship that is an open or swinging relationship. Swingers can be polyamorous. Vice versa. They are not the same. Swinging can include engaging with other couples intimately or other individuals intimately. Some polyamorous people have mutual partners, and so they play together, or they are, able to have their V also have fun together in that way. Polyamorous people do not do that all the time. I'm sure some do, but don't default to thinking that's the case. Goodness, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just such a stereotype and a cliche. It's like saying bisexuals are always rearing to go, and that's no, just no. Like, no. You may also hear primary, secondary. That's a whole other thing we'll get into some other time. I prefer the term anchor partner, which is serious long-term partners who are an anchor. Boom. That is essentially the 101 definitions. If you are curious about any of this, let me know, and I will expand, open up this video more. This is just like a brief, too long explanation of non-monogamy because I have ADHD and I only wrote a partial script. But this is just to kick things off. I really want to talk more about my experiences the experiences of other people. I want to bring other non-monogamous people in for some conversations because I am just one person, I am just one woman, I am just one Black woman with my own experiences. And while I am also clinically trained, I can only bring what I bring. I want to be able to give all of you information that is diverse, information that is complex, and I really, really, really hope that you take time to think about what sort of relationships you want. And don't just take the easy way or assume one is easier or more fun than the other. Fun's what you make it. I'm Dee. I'm clinically polyamorous and naturally Black. I'll catch you later.